A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello. You
Hello.
you yelled at me last time I didn't do it, so I had to make
I
sure I did
know. It's kind of we have traditions,
it.
That's what separates us from like Cro-Magnon men. It's our
It's
traditions.
traditions.
Yeah, I think that's the way we're different. I'm not sure.
Well, I hope there's more than just traditions, but I'm going to switch up things this week before we jump into like the things we've been watching in the movies we've seen. I just want to say, don't forget to check out our website, A side B side. A side B side podcast square.site. Normally you say that, Adam, so I've like lost it, even though I'm the one that updates it.
Yeah.
We've also got YouTube, we've got Spotify, we've got all the streamers, Apple, we're on all of them. So please like us, share us, give us 5 stars. Hopefully you think we're 5-star worthy, but you gotta vote with your heart. So I just wanted to put that out there because we normally say it at the end, but you know what? Change is good.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to like mention it early so people don't forget.
So what have you been up to this week?
I have it's almost spring here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we've had snow 3 times in the last 10 days, which is super
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Yeah.
Uh, so I've enjoyed that, and I don't know, kind of just been hanging about the house. We've done the whole rain, snow, sleet, freezing ice thing. So it's like you go outside and you're gonna get wet, or you're gonna fall over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there was like a couple days where I was like, I'm not going out because I didn't want to fall over
Fall
anymore. So
or
I've
get wet.
fall or get wet.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you right now, this is not a sponsored post, but I've had these Merrill hiking boots, like hiking shoes,
Mm-hmm.
for like 3 years almost now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're waterproof and they are amazing. And for someone who walking is my main mode of transportation, they have been an absolute lifesaver. I've to the point where I need to get a new pair because I've worn the treads off of the bottom of the shoe. But they have been the best shoes that I have ever owned. They're comfortable, and you walk through a puddle and you don't get wet. It's pretty amazing. So good job. If you're looking for a good pair of shoes, check out Merrill hiking boots. They've got a brand new Moab 3 that I'm looking at,
How
which
do you
is
spell them?
very fun. Merrill.
Okay.
Yeah, Merrill hiking boots. They are awesome and tough, and like sometimes like, oh, these are waterproof. No, these are like legit waterproof. Like I will walk through an icy puddle and I will feel cold because my foot has been surrounded,
Mm-hmm.
but my foot is not wet.
Nice.
It is so cool. So yeah, dealing with the weather, I inexplicably just decided to rewatch all of Star Trek Voyager in the last
Mm-hmm.
week.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that. I'm not all the way through it yet, but it's very funny because I haven't watched Voyager since I was a kid. And I remember being so excited because it was like the new series that was coming out, how it was going to be very different. And I forgot so much about it. So it's been really fun to kind of watch it with, a different, I'm a little bit different than I was when I was, 14, maybe. Probably a lot of the same stuff. But so that's been fun. And then, of course, we've got the brand new, Mandalorian's been happening. I got to watch
Did you see
Murder
that?
Mystery 2.
Did you recognize Lizzo in The Mandalorian?
I did. I did
Mm-hmm.
Lizzo and Jack Black and of course
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd. So that was really cool. I've heard people like some people have gotten upset about that. They're like, oh, there's too many cameos. I was like, what? Like, do you know how like back in the day, no one thought Star Wars was cool,
Mm-hmm.
and now everybody wants to be on it. Like, this is a good thing, people. And now people are like, oh no, too many stars in this movie. Too many guest stars. It takes me out of the reality. It's like whatever. The reality of space lasers. I mean, I was like, oh yeah,
Those
but
space
Jack Black,
lasers.
yeah, Jack Black showing up. Nope, totally took me out of it. A flying frog, that's really cute. No, that doesn't take me out of
Right.
it. Anyway, so yeah, I watched Murder Mystery 2 over the weekend. That was really fun. The Adam Sandler, Jennifer Aniston, uh, like
Did you
neither one of
watch
them.
that? The Murder
I
Mystery?
did. Yeah,
Was
I'd
it
seen
good
the
like the
first one.
first one?
I thought the first one was better, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's fun. It's just one of those where you can tell that like neither of them needs to do this anymore.
Right.
Like they're doing just because they're having a good time, and it was a lot of fun. I guessed the villain right away, so I
Okay.
was very proud of myself.
All
Uh,
right. Is it that easy or just because you feel like you've watched a lot of those types of shows?
I've just watched too many murder mysteries in my life, and then that made me super excited about murder mysteries. So I rewatched Clue this weekend as well, and I'll tell you that movie holds up every single time.
Okay.
So good. Clue has also kind of done a rebranding on Instagram. They've updated all the characters and kind of like this whole story about making them more modern characters.
Hmm.
So that's been interesting. It kind of feels weird. I like the old school version, but I get where they got to have like the influencer and like more of a story about why Mr. Body was killed and that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
that's kind of neat. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just watching TV and working and waiting for the sun to decide to melt some stuff, which would be super nice if it did that like in the next week. But we'll see.
It's really funny because you mentioned the weather there and how bad it's been. And it's funny because here in two separate sides of the state, it was like being on two different sides of the country because here it was like almost 80 degrees when was it 2 days ago? But on
Wow.
the other side of the state, they got 12 inches of snow. Same state, such vast temperature difference.
Well, it's a fairly long state, and you get to the western edge, and you're getting close to Colorado there, so you got a whole mountain range to deal with.
I mean, yeah, but still.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I got to see an early preview of the movie Air, which stars Viola
Ooh,
Davis, Matt Damon, and Ben Affleck. It's the story of like Michael Jordan's Nike shoe contract.
yeah, basically the making of Nike because Nike was a nothing company at that time.
I mean, it was probably on the brink of bankruptcy, to be
Mhm.
fair. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but I like how they handle Michael in this because it's the story of more his mom and the deal with the with Nike, the
Yeah,
reps over at Nike. So it was interesting. It's very good. I really enjoyed it. um I think I already told you I saw John Wick, right?
yeah, yeah.
um So of course there's that. And then what's coming out this weekend? Oh yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. You saw it. Did you actually see it?
I did. I still haven't seen it. Like I was gonna go out that
That
night
was
to
your
see it.
whole side last
I
week.
I know. I was all ready to go, and then last uh last Friday we had a really bad snowstorm, and I was all set to go to the movie, and literally like everything closed. I had friends who were like trying to get home from work and couldn't get home and ended up staying at a hotel that was like down the street from work because they could not drive anymore. And I was like, I'm just not going to go out. And that was my window was that night, but it decided to be like we had up to 11 inches in some
Oh
area
wow.
of like rain, sleet, that like restaurants closed down. And because it's April, it was literally March 31st going into April 1st. So April Fool's Day, we get this big snowstorm. And then the city was like, we're just not going to plow. And like nobody,
Wow.
it's like, it'll melt. So when I say I didn't really go anywhere, I this weekend, it's true. Because of the snow, I was like, I'm done. I'm not leaving on Friday. And I had Friday off. That was my movie time. And then I just watched basketball all weekend and movies and Voyager. But yeah, it's ridiculous. Need to go see it. I don't know when I'm going to be able to go because I'm still behind on so much work and stuff. So I feel dumb. It had a great weekend. It was the number one box office, and then
Mm-hmm.
this weekend the Super Mario movie comes out. So it's sort of a weird confluence of uh, game inspired movies coming out back to back weekends. But
Yeah.
we'll see how that one does. I think people have come around on it from the first initial, like everyone was mad that it was Chris Pratt
Mm-hmm.
for some reason. I think people have come around because it looks it looks interesting. Like I'm sure I will watch it at some point. I don't think I'm going to see that one in the theaters. I need to see Dungeons and Dragons in the theaters, so I got to go sometime in the next week because, as we mentioned, they seem to get in and out of the theaters way faster than they used to.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Um, excuse me. Sorry. I feel like every other podcast I'm like fighting something. I have allergies really bad. My allergies have been like so bad because the weather has been fluctuating so bad and the wind has been so high. So,
Mm-hmm.
but um so sorry for all my coughing. I do apologize. I wanted to say to you, I said this to you earlier because you were talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and then I was at work actually talking about Dungeons and Dragons,
Mm-hmm.
and I had someone say to me, well, you can't talk about Dungeons and Dragons without saying roll the initiative. And I was like, what does that mean? That's completely over my head. So then they
Yeah.
explained it to me, and they were like, I feel like that you would be um an elf. What did I tell you? Um an elf bard fighter. And I was like, oh, cool. That sounds pretty like BA. Like that sounds pretty badass. And you were like, yeah, it's all right. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, of course. I'm like, no, I have strong feelings about this.
right. I was like, oh, I was all like pumped and excited because I'm feeling like, yeah, I'm a fighter and I cast spells. And you were like, eh, meh, meh.
Bard is great. Like I usually play a bard, but I
Uh-huh.
think I'm a bard in that I like to be in the background and like do the talking and then but like I would assume that you would be more of a wizard or a mage, like throwing fireballs and stuff and like you know not instigating. Like I instigate the stuff. I
Oh,
talk
so I'd
big
be
and you
like
come
your
in.
cleaner. Like you
Yeah,
instigate it and then I clean it up.
pretty much. Yeah,
Okay. That sounds about right.
I mean that totally fits. How I think our personalities are. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the cool thing about D&D is like you don't have to play who you are. It's you find I think most people tend to find the character and the style that they like to play,
Mm-hmm.
and it tends to be a little bit like their personality. But sometimes people just want to play something completely different. I end up basically just playing versions of myself, but
Mm-hmm.
that's also a, probably commentary on my entire life. But always playing versions of myself.
Oh man.
Yeah, I definitely think you would be more of like a badass magic user. Bards tend to be like, yeah, they're there and they're important, but like they're not really the leader usually. That's the interesting thing about this movie is they made like Chris Pine is a bard in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, but he's definitely sort of the leader of the group. And so that's a different twist. I mean, I guess the bard is usually the talking,
Yeah.
but
All right.
yeah,
As
I've
long as
heard
I
really good
can
things.
be badass, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just think like that you would like wait, be like, okay, now fireball, blow everybody up.
You're on my nerves. I'm throwing fireballs at you.
Yeah. You're the big guns. Like you wait, and nope, we're done. You know, that's gonna be like 12d6 damage. So just get ready.
I did watch it. I did, and I think it ended up being one of the top shows on Netflix. I binged a show called The Night Agent.
Oh yeah. I because I watched Murder Mystery 2. I think I saw like a trailer. Like when you don't move fast enough and you stop on
And
one and
the
it starts
trailer
playing the
start,
trailer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
should.
get you.
I I didn't think I was gonna like it, and both my mom and my friend Arlene, hey Arlene, both were like, "Oh, you gotta watch it, you gotta watch it," and I was like, oh no, and then I started, and I could not stop. I binged it. It was really good, and I think I just read
Oh,
that I think they're supposed to get a second season.
nice.
So
It's
yeah.
I the third season of Ted Lasso's out. Haven't started that. The second season of Shadow and Bone came out in the last week and haven't started that.
Wait a minute,
And
you
I was
haven't
so
started Ted Lasso? You're the reason I started Ted Lasso.
right. I know season three. I haven't started yet. I have no idea. I've been very distracted lately with work and stuff. So I'm very annoyed with myself. I'm not. There's just also so much to watch
Oh, that's
But
true.
then I
There
end
is
up,
a ton to
then I
watch.
just randomly start rewatching Voyager for some reason when I have other shows that I've been waiting to watch. So it makes no sense. I don't make a lot of sense.
I do want to tell you that my mom said, I'm putting her on the spot right now. She's going to be like, I can't believe you said that. Um, she said maybe she's going to give it another chance, but um, Night Court, she said, not so much.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Mm,
I mean, it is what it is. I like to have it on. It makes me laugh. But it's not. It's pretty much the same show it used to be.
mm,
So I mean, for me, that might be the nostalgia version for going for me.
mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's all. Of course, Love is Blind, new episodes coming out on Friday. So,
They were just doing casting here in the Twin Cities.
oh, were they?
Yeah, it was a very
Oh,
involved like thing you had to fill out to even get just even apply to get an audition slot. So
did you try?
I looked at it mostly for a friend who was more considering doing it, and I was like, man, this is a lot of information. Like they wanted all your like links to all your social stuff and like essays about like why you should would be a good pick and what do you believe. Like, tell us what you believe love is. It's like, geez,
Mm.
it was kind of intense. So clearly they do put a lot of work into finding these people because they seem to always find people that make for good TV.
Oh yeah, yeah. Apparently they're doing something in Nashville where they are allowing you, and they may be doing this all over the country, but a friend of mine sent this to me. A friend of mine named Christina, she sent this to me and she's like, I thought you'd like to see this. It says, come experience Love is Blind pods for the first time ever. And it's like a speed date opportunity. And you get to take photos and there's going to be giveaways. And it says, if you could go on a date with Cole from season 3 of Love is Blind, would you? The pods will be open for a speed date event with fan favorite Cole. So
Huh.
I think that's
Interesting.
pretty interesting that that they're taking that route, and I'm sure they're taking him from city to city, or they might be taking one stop might be Bartiste, and one stop might
Mm-hmm.
be whoever Shane or whatever from the show. So
Yeah,
that's pretty
whatever they
interesting.
could do to pump up the publicity.
Exactly, exactly. But anyway, that's my week. I think I'm gonna try to get out and see. I might try to see Mario Brothers. I don't know. We'll see how I feel about it. I don't know.
You don't seem super into it.
I know I'm not super excited for Super Mario Brothers, but we'll see.
I also don't know that you're the target audience, or that I am
No,
the target audience.
no,
I think that
absolutely
this
not.
might be a little bit more for the younger crowd,
Probably, but yeah,
probably.
we'll see. Anyway, so it's episode 130, which means you get to start, Adam.
As I mentioned, I've been watching a lot of stuff in the last week, but also it is the spring, and I've got a senior in high school, and so we're doing all the spring stuff. My youngest is also doing track for the first time, so we've got all the scheduling, and it can get really tough to keep everything together. I was talking with a friend of mine about having teenagers and how it feels like at some point you just kind of your schedule is determined by your kid's schedule,
Uh-huh.
and it can be challenging. And teenagers, as good as they are, can drive you nuts a couple times.
Yeah.
And as I often do, that made me start thinking about series where parents dealt with teenagers, and for some weird reason, which has no connection to reality, because I am not experiencing anything like what happens in this show. The first thing I could think of about dealing with teenagers was a TV series that lasted for 5 seasons on TNT from 2011 into 2015, starring one of my favorites, Noah Wiley, who, if I look at his career, if there's, there are a lot of careers that I would love to have, but he's had a really fun career. He
Hmm.
made tons of money on ER. He got to do The Librarians. He executive produced Falling Skies. Now he's parachuted into Leverage, back in the most recent reboot, and he seems like he gets to do fun stuff that because he can choose his projects.
Hmm.
And so in this series, he's a former Harvard professor who has 3 teenagers, and they're like that's about the only thing that we are similar. Well, I'm not a Harvard professor, but I've got teenagers. He's dealing with an alien invasion. I'm dealing with snow, so a little bit different. But Falling Skies takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. Basically, like if somebody, said, what would happen if Independence Day we didn't fight back and you know we were just kind of surviving in that world that the aliens have taken over.
Mm-hmm.
And they, much of the population has been decimated. They're, nomadic, trying to find. It's just kind of got a, like a fall. Words are hard. Zombies. With the guy with the hat. The Walking Dead.
Oh, I was like,
Yeah, I
what?
know. Nope, nobody was. It's kind of got a Dead vibe where like you've got different tribes and they're all trying to survive, and Noah Wiley's Tom Mason is second in command of what is called the Second Massachusetts, the militia regiment. But they deal with things like trying to find food and shelter and weapons and dealing with the aliens that are still running around and fighting back against them, trying to eventually save the planet. But doing that also as a father of teenagers who I can only imagine teenagers are tough to deal with at any time frame. But when you're also like, hey, we're fighting aliens every couple of days and searching for food, it ratchets things up a little bit. And one of the fun quirks on this series is that the aliens, well, I guess not fun, but an interesting part that kind of separates it from just your classic, alien invasion type show, is that the aliens are abducting the younger children. And eventually, spoiler alert, find out that they're using, that they're basically farming humans to have more troops for intergalactic war. But the kids get like these things on their back that eventually transform them into slaves for the aliens. But the idea of not only do we have to protect, everyone's trying to survive, but they're coming for our kids, and that again ratchets it up quite a bit. It's an uneven series, and even and on our website, A Side B Side Podcast.square.site, all of our links will be on there for both the A side and the B side, and you'll be able to read some of my source material and a lot of the interviews, especially with Noah Wiley at the end of the show. There's a really great one where he, after 5 years, he's been an executive producer on this, but they've had 5 different people each season. Somebody new was running the show, so each season feels different from the last, and that gives it some interesting things, but it also isn't as strong when you're building a cohesive world. I mean, you look at something like Walking Dead has had people that were kind of in charge of it the whole time, but you look at another one where you've got Game of Thrones. They had some very uneven seasons, and even though they had the same people in charge for the whole run of the show, pretty much, they had a lot of uneven stuff. So the show runs for 5 seasons. The first season I really enjoy. I think it's a lot more cohesive. There's world building. It gets muddied in seasons 3 and 4. The ending is a little too, happy day for me. But understandably, Steven Spielberg was another executive producer on the show, and he was sort of the one who came up with the concept, and definitely is a Spielbergian style ending, more than I think it really needed to be. But that's okay. But there's some great people in this series. Besides Noah Wiley, you've got Moon Bloodgood, who's pretty much like the second star of the show. You've got Will Patton, who's one of those guys that always seems to play like a jerk or a military guy. Doug Jones shows up in later seasons, who we've mentioned Doug a bunch of times as one of the great the character actors, but always in costume. I mean, he's almost like an actor and a puppeteer, because every one of his characters is very heavily costumed, and usually you don't even realize that it's him unless you knew ahead of time. Like I said, it's 52 episodes, 5 seasons. It is available on HBO Max with your subscription, or you can download it on Amazon, I think, for $3.99 for like per episode, but that adds up pretty quick. You might as well just get a subscription to Amazon Max. I've not been able to find it anywhere on DVD, which is a little disappointing, but I think DVD is kind of not what it used to be. So if you're looking for an escape from winter weather, like I was this weekend, and you're struggling with how do I, identify with teenagers because I have teenagers and I remember being a teenager and I had everything figured out. And I look back and I'm like, man, I had no idea what I was doing, but I was convinced I did. So it's a little frustrating, but this is a great escapism. It's got some decent special effects, even for a TV show. It looks a little clunky now as we're, 12 years after the first season came out. But if you've ever watched any of the Librarians or Leverage or even Noah Wiley from ER, it's definitely worth checking out and look at for Falling Skies on HBO Max if you're looking for a fun thing to do this weekend, which involves aliens trying to kill.
All right. I don't do aliens, but I'm gonna trust you.
Yeah, I mean these are not scary. I mean it's like Independence Day level scary.
Oh, okay, I could do that.
Yeah. There's a couple times when you're jump scares and there's like there's mechs or mechanical big robots that the aliens use. But it's more about like this family trying to survive. So I would say if you like, it's not nearly as gory as like The Walking Dead because it was on TNT versus HBO
Mm-hmm.
or any of the more paid channels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's accessible, it's fun, the action is okay, but it's more about these people coming together. And there's this whole sort of we're by using the Second Massachusetts Regiment, we're thinking about colonial. It has this sort of colonial revolutionary, like we're fighting back against the oppressors, and instead of redcoats, they're aliens that skitter around and have giant mechanical suits. But there's a little bit of that patriotism, Revolutionary War feel to it as well. So
Okay.
highly recommend. I don't know why I thought of that one when I was thinking about parenting, but it's where my brain went, and I'm glad it did.
All right, so is that the A side?
That is the A side.
Well, for the B side this week, we're gonna change it, not really change it up. And normally we hit the serial killers pretty hard. This week we are going to do a spree killer. You remember spree killers
Okay.
do more killing in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Often we hear about these, serial killers where their crimes are spaced over years, if not decades.
Right. This is actually in about a year's time. This is the story of Stephen Oken. Stephen was born January 22nd, which I do not like that he was an Aquarius. Ew, and a day before me, but many, many years before. He was born January 22nd of 1962. He was actually adopted into a very well-off family that happened to be Jewish in Randallstown, Maryland. David and Davida Oken, they raised him along with a younger brother and sister. David was a pharmacist. And when Stephen actually got older, he ended up working for his father when he graduated from high school. He graduated from Randallstown High School in 1980, and his dad ended up giving him a job in his pharmacy, which did not go too well. So when he was about 11 years old, his parents decided to tell him that reluctantly that he was adopted. They had been warned by some of their friends that it would be better for Stephen to find out from them than to like hear it around the way. So they let him know, Stephen, biologically, no, you're not ours, but we are your parents and we love you. They actually adopted him very young. His birth mother had given him away when he was like 3 days old.
Oh
He
wow.
did not take it well at all. He apparently, according to his mother, screamed incessantly for like 2 hours.
Wow.
She said that they hugged him and they kissed him. They told him, that we chose you because we love you. You are ours. But that seems to have kind of begun his downward spiral.
Oof. No, I mean, your entire world changes. It's understandable. It can be a traumatic event.
Yeah. So Stephen ended up with the job at his dad's pharmacy, and he ended up, well, taking drugs from the pharmacy. And that just continued and continued, and it just was like this downward spiral. In 1986, Davida saw her son on this spiral of drugs and alcohol, and he apparently began to become obsessed with sex and violence. And she saw this starting in 1986. Well, in 1987, November 1st of 1987, Keith Garvin, he's in the Navy. He had just been with his beautiful wife, Dawn. He goes back to the Navy base in Virginia, and he had been on pass. And so he like I said, he was just been with his wife. And so he gets back to the naval base in Oceana. He gets to the base. He tries to call his wife to say, hey, babe, I made it. Phone rings. There's no answer. So he tries again. No answer. He tries again. No answer. So he's like, okay, something is not sitting right with me. So he calls his father-in-law, Dawn's dad, Frederick Joseph Romano. Well, Frederick actually lived close to the Garvins, Dawn and Keith's apartment. So he's like, hey, can you just go check on her? So he agrees. So he's like, okay, cool, no problem. So Frederick calls his daughter. She doesn't answer. He calls again. She doesn't answer. So he's like, okay, now Keith's called. I've called. There's no answer. So he goes over to their apartment, to Dawn and Keith Garvin's apartment. When he gets there, the front door is open. All the lights are on. The TV is on. It's just blaring super loud. So he's like, oh my God, something's wrong. So he rushes into the apartment, and sadly, Frederick Joseph Romano finds his daughter Dawn in the bedroom, no clothes on, and she's got a bottle protruding from her body, her lower half. Immediately, he attempts CPR. He sees there's blood streaming from her forehead. He calls 911. Paramedics get there. They try to administer CPR, but unfortunately, it was too late. Dawn Marie Gavin had already passed away. So at 2:30 on November 2nd, 2:30 a.m., November 2nd, police get there, and they, of course, are doing their inspection of the scene. And a detective later testifies that when he walked into the apartment, he didn't see any sign of forced entry. But once he was inside, he saw that there was a bra, a pair of pants, some tennis shoes, a shirt, and a sweater on the floor near the sofa in the living room. What he noticed, though, because I know you're thinking, whoa, that sounds fishy. The bra wasn't unhooked, though. So it's not like she took all these off and then, there was something to it. No, the bra wasn't unhooked. It had actually been ripped off onto the side, and the pants were turned inside out, which is a sign of struggle.
Yikes.
So the detective noticed a small piece of rubber on the floor near the television set. And then in the bedroom, he saw 2 shell casings from a .25 caliber weapon. There was one of them was laying on the bed. The shirt was also bloodstained and had what the detective believed was a bullet hole in it. So, of course, there's an autopsy of Dawn's body, and it's revealed that she died as a result of 2 gunshot wounds. One had entered her left eyebrow and the other at her right ear. So he didn't wait too long because, again, this is a spree. So less than 2 weeks later, he enters the home of his sister-in-law. Remember, he had a younger brother, a younger sister. He enters the home of his brother and sister-in-law and murders his sister-in-law, 43-year-old Patricia Antoinette Hurt. He dumps her body along the White Marsh Boulevard. Then he fled to Kittery, Maine, and enters a hotel in Kittery. And he sexually assaults and murders desk clerk Lori E. Ward, who was 25 at the time. And that was on November 16th of 1987.
Yikes.
The very next day, he's arrested on November 17th, and he's ultimately convicted in Maine for first-degree murder, robbery with a firearm, and theft from Lori's murder. He's sentenced to life without parole on that murder charge, 20 years on the robbery charge, and 5 years on the theft charge, all set to run concurrently.
Wow.
He then is sent back to Maryland, where he faces the separate charge for the other 2 homicides, the one of his sister-in-law and the one of Dawn Garvin. So he's indicted in circuit court in Baltimore, and he's facing first-degree murder, sexual offenses, burglary, daytime housebreaking, robbery with a dangerous or deadly weapon, theft, and a handgun violation. Evidence against him is mounting. It's massive.
Yeah.
You got the murder weapon. You got the handgun that was actually found in his home shortly after the murder. Now, remember, I mentioned a piece of rubber that was found in the apartment, in Don Garvin's apartment. That piece of rubber was from his tennis shoe. Also, there's several witnesses at the trial that identify Stephen Oken as a person who'd been in the neighborhood who tried to get into several other residences in the area a few days prior to the murder of Don Garvin. The police chief in Kittery, Maine, his name was Edward Strong, and he said that the murder of the murder of Lori Ward was very difficult for him because his daughter was the same age. He said the poor girl was working her way through school and putting herself through college. He said Oken just checked into the motel, and a couple hours later, he murdered her. Chief Edward Strong also testified in the 2 murder trials in Maryland because he found bloody materials and other evidence in the hotel room or the motel room that was linked to all 3 of the murders. He said this individual brutally murdered 3 women. I have no doubt that he would have murdered again if we hadn't caught him. He believed that the punishment for his crimes was suitable. He said, I've never in my law enforcement career seen a person who deserves the death penalty more than this individual. I'm glad that they have the death penalty in Maryland. And of course, he was strong words, right?
Yeah. No beating around the bush there.
Yeah. So he was found guilty and he was sentenced to death for the murder of Don Garvin in 1991. Following his conviction for murder, he pled guilty to killing Patricia Hurt and received an additional life sentence. The governor at the time, Robert Ehrlich, actually denied clemency, and on June 17th of 2004, Stephen Oken was, after his last meal, which consisted of a chicken patty, potatoes and gravy, green beans, marble cake, and fruit punch, which was the regular prison meal that day, he was sentenced. He was put to death by lethal injection at 9:18 local time at the Metropolitan Transition Center in Baltimore. He was 42 years old. The entire time that he was under arrest and going through all of this, his parents were very supportive of him. His mom actually became an advocate against the death penalty. She shouted, "Just wait till it's your child in the gas chamber," to the female prosecutor. Which, hopefully my child's not ever murdering anybody to end up in the gas chamber.
Yeah, it's not an eventuality there,
Right. That's not like choice A is murder gas chamber, choice B travel nurse. No, that's not the option.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what she's trying to say, but
I mean, I do too, but
yeah.
So, again, he was put to death, and well, I feel rightfully so. I'm with Chief Edward Strong. Sorry, you got it.
Yeah, because he was the guy from Maine, and I'm guessing Maine didn't have the death penalty, so he's like, I'm glad Maryland does.
Yeah, he's like, go Maryland, go Maryland.
Yeah. So his entire crimes, like 2 weeks, right?
Basically 2 weeks. And then he was caught like immediately, which thank goodness.
Thank God.
Because like that police chief said,
going.
he would have just kept going. So thankfully, he left evidence behind. He left the shell casings. They found the murder weapon. He left a piece of his shoe. So kudos for them for catching him so fast. Unfortunately, 3 lives were lost. Could have
been a lot where, I mean, how many times do we hear on the B side that, something like that happens and then 6 months later it happens again, or 10
or they get arrested and then they get let out and then it happens again.
Oh, and then it happens
some
again.
Weird technicality. Yeah.
Way too many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad this was a pretty open and shut case for the law enforcement officials.
But there you go. That is the story of American Spree Killer, Stephen Oken, and that is the B-side. And again, you can always check us out
on A-Side, B-Side, podcast.square.site. We always have all of our links and sources on there. So if you want to read more about Stephen Oken or you want to read more about Falling Skies, you can check out those links on there. Also on our website, we've got merchandise. So if you want a very cool sweatshirt or some coffee mugs or a shower curtain, any of that stuff is available. Brooke does does all the design, and we have some really fun ones on there that will surprise you. You could also, if you just stumbled upon us on accident or were recommended via your streaming service, you can like, share, follow, subscribe to us. Go to our website. You can actually get links to every one of the services out there that will give you all of the information. And if you like us on all of those, that'd be even great. We're even on Audible now. We've been added on there. It's just another one you can get us on. Apple Music, Spotify, Audible, Stitcher. They're all out there. And
I think you got it.
nope, we got to buy Brooke a coffee. So go to buy us a coffee, buy me a coffee, buy us a coffee, buy me a coffee.
Buy me a coffee.
Buymeacoffee.com, and you can donate there. And that money goes to keeping Brooke awake when she has to do all the editing because she works like 20-hour days anyway. So there's a lot of coffee involved. And again, like, subscribe, share. Every time you click on something of ours and share it with somebody else, it is the nicest thing you can do. It feels like a little hug. So if you want to give us a hug, go ahead and like and share and subscribe. And if you don't want to hug us, you can still like, share, and subscribe. I just want to make sure we covered all of our bases.
If you don't want to hug us, that's fine too.
That's okay too. I mean, I don't want to put anybody to your level of comfortability with hugging.
Oh man. All right. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.